There's a moment in music history when a song becomes more than a song. It becomes a shadow, a myth, an echo trapped between reality and something far stranger. And few stories travel this strange borderland like the one behind Gloomy Sunday, a piece of music that the world has renamed, feared, misunderstood, and surrounded with legends darker than the night it was supposedly written in. What you're about to hear is not a list of facts, not a collection of neat bullet points, but a slow descent into a story that has lived for almost a century, whispered about, exaggerated, denied, and reborn too many times to count. It begins in Budapest in the early 1930s, a place balancing between beauty and despair. Hungary was still carrying the deep scars of World War I and the economic collapse that followed. Cities were quiet, unemployment was rising, and the future felt like a fog no one could see through. And in the middle of this heavy atmosphere lived Rezső Seress, a struggling pianist and composer. Seress never imagined himself writing something cursed or legendary. He dreamed only of recognition, of being able to make a living with his music, of finally being seen. But the world has a strange way of twisting intentions, especially when pain is involved. According to some accounts, the song that would one day be called the Hungarian Suicide Song was born out of heartbreak. Seress had been left by the woman he loved, and in that cold emptiness he sat down at a piano and tried to turn the weight inside him into sound. The chords came out minor, slow and heavy, like footsteps in snow. The melody rose only to fall again, repeating a pattern that felt like someone taking a breath just to release it in defeat. Whether the heartbreak story is literal or symbolic doesn't matter. What matters is that the music carried a genuine sadness, a kind of sadness listeners would later describe as almost suffocating. When Seress finished the composition, he paired with lyricist László Jávor, whose original Hungarian lyrics were even darker than the melody itself. They spoke of hopelessness, of a world drowned in overwhelming grief, of a plea to escape from life. These words were later softened in some translations, but in their original form they were blunt, raw, and intimate. And maybe this is where the seeds of the legend began, because a song that doesn't hide its sorrow is already unusual. A song that embraces it completely, almost lovingly, is something people aren't used to facing. When Szomorú Vasárnap, the original title, was released, it didn't instantly become a phenomenon. It wasn't banned, it wasn't feared, and it wasn't considered dangerous. It was simply another sad song in a sad era. But as the years passed, a strange pattern appeared. Newspapers began reporting suicides in which the victims supposedly referenced the song. Some had sheet music nearby. Some had the title written on a note. Some were said to have been listening to the song moments before they died. Most of these reports were exaggerated or outright sensationalized, but the timing was perfect for a myth to form. The world was heading toward war. Economic depression was crushing millions of people, and the media, just like today, loved a dramatic story. The song that kills was a headline too irresistible to ignore. Soon more reports appeared, each one adding to the story, whether or not it had any connection to reality. Journalists wrote about lovers jumping into rivers, soldiers taking their own lives, families found with the record spinning in the background. Whether these stories happened precisely as written will never be known. But once a myth begins, facts matter less than the collective imagination. The legend grew so large that by the time Billie Holiday recorded the English version in 1941, the song already carried an aura of dread. Her voice, haunting, emotional, trembling, pushed the myth even further, reaching an American audience that had never heard of Seress or Hungary. Some radio stations refused to play it. Others allowed the melody, but demanded the original dark lyrics be changed to something more hopeful. And even then, the song made people uneasy. It didn't feel like a normal sad song. It felt like something forbidden, like reading a diary you shouldn't have touched. But behind the myth is a more human tragedy. Seress, the composer whose name became forever tied to a so-called cursed song, struggled with depression for most of his life. He never found the fame or financial stability he hoped for. Even the success of Gloomy Sunday brought him more frustration than joy, because he felt people were fascinated by the myth instead of the music. He once said in an interview that he wished the legend would disappear so listeners could appreciate the composition for what it truly was. But stories take on a life of their own, and the legend did not disappear. It grew, expanded, and eventually overshadowed Seress himself. At the end of his life, Seress took his own life, a tragic detail that became the final piece of fuel for the myth. Suddenly people said, see, even the creator couldn't escape it. But this is a misunderstanding, a dramatic simplification of a complex human story. Seress didn't die because he wrote a cursed song. He died because he was a man battling deep inner darkness for decades. The song didn't create the pain created the song. Still, the legend refuses to die. Even today, many people talk about Gloomy Sunday as if it's forbidden. Some say you shouldn't listen to it alone. Others claim the melody triggers something in the human mind, a deep emotional response. And while that idea may sound supernatural, there's a more grounded explanation. The music and lyrics express despair in a pure, unfiltered way, something modern songs rarely do. It doesn't offer hope. It doesn't soften the blow. It simply describes sorrow with complete honesty. And for some listeners, that honesty cuts unusually deep. So what is the truth about Gloomy Sunday? Is it cursed? Or is it just a haunting piece of music wrapped in decades of exaggeration and dark storytelling? The answer depends on what you believe music can do, because music is powerful. It can manipulate emotions, revive memories, stir fears, comfort, or disturb. And a song created in a moment of genuine pain will always carry a special energy, not supernatural, not dangerous, but intensely human. The myth persists because humans love stories with shadows. We love the idea of a forbidden melody, a tune capable of crossing boundaries between art and mortality. We love the idea that a song can be so beautiful and so devastating that it becomes too much to bear. And in that sense, the story of Gloomy Sunday reveals more about us than about Seress or the victims in the old newspaper headlines. It reveals how much we project our fears, our struggles, and our imagination onto art. There's also another layer that makes the myth so enduring: silence. No one can count how many of the original stories were real, and how many were invented by bored journalists. No one can know how many people referenced the song because of its reputation, rather than its emotional impact. No one knows how many tragedies were connected to it only after the fact. And silence, uncertainty, and gaps in the story make the perfect breeding ground for legend. And so the myth travels through generations. Parents warn their children about it. Teenagers seek it out of curiosity. Musicians cover it, sampling the eerie melody. Some countries still treat it with caution. Some listeners swear they feel something strange when they hear it. Others say it's simply a moving, melancholic composition, no more dangerous than any sad poem or tragic movie. But through it all, the real message is this: fear doesn't come from the song. It comes from the human mind, which is the most powerful storyteller of all. We fear what we don't understand. We fear stories that seem too perfect, too dramatic, too tainted by coincidence. And Gloomy Sunday has all the ingredients: a tragic composer, a dark historical moment, sad lyrics, mysterious reports, and a haunting melody that sounds like a confession whispered late at night. In the end, the true mystery of the song isn't whether it's cursed. It's how one piece of music could gather so many legends, distort so many memories, and still remain standing almost a century later. It survived wars, bans, translations, censorship, and global sensationalism. And despite everything, it continues to be played, studied, feared, and admired. Some say cursed things survive because people are drawn to them. Others say they survive because they express something universal, and Gloomy Sunday expresses something many are afraid to admit. Sadness is real, heavy, and human. And sometimes when put into music, it becomes unforgettable. And that's the true haunting power of this song. Not a curse, a connection, a melody that speaks to the darkest corners of the human soul. Not to harm it, but to reveal it.